Alright. Yep. God's Not Dead 2 exists. And it's here. For our viewing pleasure, if you want to call it that. Depends on your definition of pleasure, I suppose. Perhaps the masochist in all of us will indeed consider it pleasure, but I don't know. Okay, so I guess we'll just go into it. We'll just start at the beginning. So it was 2 years ago we had the first one. And it was one of those ones where there was a whole bunch of different stories going on. There was Kevin Sorbo, the atheist teacher. There was a woman who had cancer, and Dean Cain was like her cheating boyfriend or whatever. There was the girl that got disowned by her family because of believing in God and not their God or something. There was the car that wouldn't start, and probably other things that I don't remember. So
Newsboys music video at the end.
We have some returning characters. Obviously not the guy who got hit by a car and died alone in the rain because he didn't believe in God. He's obviously not back. However, the only returning character I seem to remember is the woman with cancer and the dude who couldn't get the car to start. I couldn't remember if the girl was in the other one or not. But anyway, we're not really doing the intersecting thing anymore. I mean, like, they're kind of trying, but they're being super lazy about it. But it's mainly this one plot with Melissa Joan Hart, and the others are just kind of here on the side, almost completely worthless and hardly tying into anything.
Right.
Like, to the other movie's credit, the stories did kind of, collide at least a little bit. Or maybe they didn't, I don't remember. So we begin, and yes, it still looks like a cheap TV movie. We've still got our, let's find all the actors that are currently in hiding and pull them out and put them into this. And there's a whole lot of exposition at the beginning. It's the type of movie where characters speak in lines where they're constantly explaining something. Like when the girl's sitting there all sad and her mom is saying, "You have to get over it. You have to move on." And we're supposed to go, "Ooh, I wonder what they're talking about. I'm intrigued in their story already." We're not. We're just kind of waiting for them to say what the fuck we're supposed to be getting over. And then there's the line with, if you do that, you might as well kiss Stanford goodbye, because you're going to Stanford, because we have to establish this. Every story starts like this. And then there's the woman who has like 36 days until retirement or something. Well, I thought because they established that, I thought she was going to be important. I don't recall ever seeing her again after that little introduction. It was really just to show that the teachers, except for Melissa Joan Hart, don't care. So, yes, you can see this movie already is kind of putting people in these places to make sure you know who you're going to root for, or they know who you're going to root for. And then there's so there's the whole Melissa Joan Hart quotes Jesus or something in class. And then she ends up getting put on trial for it. And the opposing attorney, Ray Wise, comes in and says in a nice, sinister fashion, "Not only are we going to, put her on trial, but we're going to prove that God is indeed dead." Which is really weird because despite the fact that that's, they set up that that's his motive, he's not really like that through the trial. It's just that one scene where he's like, "We're going to prove God's dead." But I don't know. And they portray him as the bad guy for the rest of the movie. He's a bad guy for two reasons. Number one, because his name is Cain. Which is really funny, because you know who else was a bad guy named Cain? The preacher in the Poltergeist sequels. And secondly, there's a scene where he has a really douchey smile on his face while he's getting his shoes shined. That just spells, I'm the bad guy in a shitty TV movie, just all over.
Yep.
And the fact that they cast Ray Wise, I guess. Has he ever played a nice guy?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. No, that in one of the Jeepers Creepers too, I think he was like the hero or something, or he was like the veteran or whatever. Okay, and so then the other dude, the dude that couldn't get the car to start in the first movie, is back. The dude from he showed up in another one of these. Faith of Our Fathers, I think, was the one he was in.
He was Commissioner Jordan. He was Commissioner Gordon.
Huh?
He was the voice of Commissioner Gordon. On Batman the Killing Joke. So yes, he's played a good guy. He's played Commissioner Gordon.
Lawrence. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, and he's got a new story going on. But he's with that same dude. That dude that I'm pretty sure stalks him. Because every single scene he's in, that dude just kind of shows up. No matter where he is. Even when he's in the hospital, that dude just materializes. It's actually kind of creepy. I think that dude might be like a ghost or something. Like his guardian angel or something. Like if they do a third one of these, God forbid, I think it's going to be revealed that guy is a ghost. I'm going to go ahead and call that now, just in case. And then... I don't even know what his purpose is in this. Eventually he becomes one of the jurors, but then like his appendix do whatever appendix do when you need drama, and he collapses and he goes to the hospital. It's like, wow, this has no bearing on anything. And you think that's going to be like extremely significant, that he's like the really big firm believer in the story, and then he's like abruptly sent to the hospital. Like he's going to have like a crisis of faith or something. No, he just goes to the hospital, and then that's the end of his story. And once they like operate on him, he's all bitter, and then nothing. That's it. And they introduce another guy, the dude with all the questions. That's not important either. Because our main focus here is Melissa Joan Hart being put on trial, and Jesse Metcalfe as her lawyer. Yeah. When you're calling in John Tucker to be your lawyer, this movie's probably not going in the right place.
Nope.
And then Ernie Hudson appears as the judge. Ernie Hudson, who didn't get a pre-title credit. Like, they went through the whole cast list, and then they show the title, and then we see Ernie Hudson's name. That's how much they don't care about him. When he's like... I don't know, would you say he's the most respected actor in the movie? I'd say probably.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
By miles.
Okay, whatever. Well, there is, yeah, this is sad. This movie is the official swan song of Fred Dalton Thompson. And he's in it for 20 seconds. He shows up, he's in a scene that's totally pointless, has no bearing on anything, and then he's gone. From Our Lives Forever. This is his last role.
That's horrible.
I know. Okay. And doing this whole setup... like kind of introducing other characters and then kind of going into the trial thing is kind of sloppy to begin with. Because you talk about, like, a lot of times there'll be uneven distribution when you try to do that kind of stuff. Well, this is one of those times where we have Melissa Joan Hart is in her classroom just teaching, just to establish who she is. And then we cut to the woman with cancer, and she's in the doctor's office. And she's called in from the waiting room to go into the doctor's office. And this is the way this scene plays out, okay? You have all these characters you gotta deal with, and this is how things are split up. Listen to this flow. You have Melissa Joan Hart teaching her class, and it's a whole scene of her teaching the class. It's kind of establishing her and the girl. That's kind of involved in all this. And then we cut to the woman in the waiting room. And then she's called into the doctor's office. And this scene is like 20 seconds. It's like, here's this woman we know has cancer, and she's called into a doctor's office where we don't see what happens. And then it cuts back to Melissa Joan Hart at a cafe after school is over, apparently. And then that's like a whole scene. Did Cancer Woman really need to be in there? I feel like that was accidentally put in that spot. I don't know. Or, you know, the fact that maybe 3 other scenes were supposed to be in between those Melissa Joan Hart scenes? I don't know. But anyway, now, let's talk about this for a minute, because I I've talked about this before. I think it was especially War Room. War Room was really bad about this. But one thing about these movies that really, really bothers me, as I've said many times, as I've said for practically every single one, the way they depict this is not healthy to their audience. Especially since they know these are the kind of audiences that'll pretty much eat up whatever they're being fed. So many impressionable young people are in those theaters. It's so sad. Because here's what happens, is, Cancer Woman goes in, and it turns out that she's in remission. Which is very good news. It's great. Only one issue here. The fact that the next time she has a scene, she is discussing the fact that she's in remission. And the dude, who, I believe this is in church, obviously. So, if she's in church and she's talking to a dude about how she's in remission, what do you think she's being told, and what do you think she absolutely fully 150% believes? She is in remission solely because she prayed for it. Well, let's talk about a couple of things in regards to this. What these movies really, really want you to believe is if you really, really, really believe and you really, really, really pray as hard as you possibly can, there's a very good chance you will get what you want and your life will be awesome. And there are two problems with this that I can see from both ways. Because like I've said, I'm kind of on both sides here, to an extent. I totally get the people who are, I think this is all made up, and there are the people that believe that there is a God and there was Jesus and all that stuff. Because I can see from both sides, because nobody fucking knows. That's the point. So, if looking at it from the side of, this is all imaginary, and people are just kind of, took a book that was written 1,000 or so, 2,000 years ago, or whatever it was, and they kind of believed this really fantastical stuff actually happened. And you can look at that as totally crazy, and say, people who kind of pray and think that that's where all the good stuff in their life comes from, they're kind of insane, and that's extremely unhealthy. And there is no real possible way that that is going to be the way it is, because just being realistic. However, let's say you do believe in that stuff. There's another big problem here. Even if you do believe in this, which is great, I think if you believe in this stuff rationally, you're aware of the fact that this is really just not how this works. I point to you, there is, to get in the holiday spirit, this past weekend, I watched Jesus Christ Superstar. And you will remember, my favorite number in that movie, which is, it's the one that starts off when they're in the temple, and they're using it to, sell all their stuff. And Jesus gets all mad about it, because that's not what the temple's for. And then that number goes into another number called Lepers. And Lepers is basically that depiction of, you have one Jesus in the middle of all this that everybody knows can help them and heal them. So they all kind of come out from the cracks and from their caves or wherever, and they surround him. And it's the whole, the lyrics are something like, see my eyes, you can hardly see, and see me stand, I can hardly walk. And they're just trying to get him all at the same time to heal them. And Jesus ends up saying, there's too many of you, I can't do this, leave me alone. And then another good depiction of this, believe it or not, is in Bruce Almighty. When Bruce has the power of God, and when he hears prayer, there's so much of it at once, because there's so many of us, it's just one sound that's completely intelligible. And there's nothing he can do about it. And when he just says yes to everybody, total and complete chaos ensues. This is a very long point I've made to get to the idea of no matter what side you're on, this is an extremely terrible message. If you want, like I said, go to Jesus Christ Superstar, or holy shit, even Bruce Almighty, if you want kind of a better outlook on this. Because this is just... And once she finds out the news, what does she do first? I don't really remember their connection from the first movie, but because I don't remember this, if there even was one, I was kind of caught off guard that she was like, so my cancer's in remission? I know what I have to do absolutely first. I have to call the newsboy.
Yes, you have to call the newsboys immediately.
Oh, God. Okay, so... Do you see why this is hard to take seriously?
No, trust me, I know. I understand.
And what I'm talking about here with these really, really unhealthy messages that this movie's sending, get a load of this, people who made this movie. You can say it's all about atheists, and atheists are evil and stuff like that. There's actually one where, what was it? Where she was being sad about her brother because her brother's dead.
Who mentioned his name? Ever.
And then there's that. I was trying to remember that. Was that in the first movie, or is that a new development for this movie? I don't remember. I only remember.
There's like 1,000 of these every year.
I only remember Kevin Sorbo's death in the first movie.
Yes.
So.
And Dean Cain being like the biggest heel on the face of planet Earth.
Yeah. So she's being all sad about her brother, and the dude's reaction to this is, "Yeah, you see, that's the thing about atheists." Where did that come from?
Yeah.
What is he even talking about? Because that was not even in the conversation.
We missed something. Apparently it was happening before the camera was turned on. It's like, I forgot to turn the camera on.
But listen, this whole, atheists are absolutely 100% in the wrong, and they're evil people, and they have no understanding of anything whatsoever. And this whole idea of, as long as you pray, you will be in complete and total health. And nothing bad will happen to you as long as you keep praying and you believe. I don't think it's evil atheists that are keeping stuff like the Melissa Joan Hart character from quoting Jesus in the Bible in school. I think messages like the ones this movie is trying to put out are reasonably why the Bible and stuff like that is not allowed in schools. Because the whole point of school is that you have rooms full of impressionable kids that you're trying to prepare for the world. And when you have movies like this and people who think this way, it's probably best we just kind of leave that stuff out and let them find that on their own. And if that's what they want to do, then that's great. But if you're going to put this on an impressionable person, you end up with people like the people that made this movie. And that's not good. We don't want that. I would think reasonably religious people would not want that either. Because it really takes, I think, what the general idea is and just completely... It goes back, all this stuff's covered in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Isn't that great?
It takes all the stuff that we're supposed to see it as and twists it into something totally different and totally just not right. And I know they think they're in the right, and they think that they're doing something good. But this is just so wrong. This should not be being taught to impressionable young people. So, yeah, like, I get where the message is coming from, and to an extent, it's a good thing. But not in any way the way it's portrayed in these current line of movies we're getting. It's like, I think I mentioned this before, I heard somebody recently, say that, this new string of religious movies we've been getting for the past few years is basically like, this generation's version of exploitation movies.
Yeah, I can see that.
These movies are real bad news. And the thing about it is, what I really didn't like about the first movie is that it did not in any way set out to be what it promised to be. I was really, really... I mean, regardless of the fact that pretty much all of these movies suck, I was really intrigued by the idea when the first movie came out of the premise of the movie being to prove the existence of God. That's a pretty interesting setup. But the trouble is that movie totally and completely copped out and thought it had proved it to us when it didn't do shit. It just kind of thought it had a one-up and then just quit. And because one character got, like, you know... It just doesn't work. So, there is the ending when obviously, what do you think happens? How do you think this trial goes? So, we never ever see... There was the one scene at the very beginning where Ray Wise says, we're gonna prove that God is dead. But then, like I said, even though he's portrayed as a bad guy, throughout the entire trial, I never got that vibe from him. He seemed quite understanding. He seemed quite on the fence. Mm-hmm. And willing to let people believe what they were gonna believe in. He was just... Like I said, when you look at movies like this, his character is kind of in the right. This probably shouldn't be in schools for the simple fact that it's teaching it this way is unhealthy. It's something people have to find for themselves and decide for themselves. And so, once, shock surprise, the good guys win the trial, the woman gets one more up on Ray Wise by saying, you just proved the existence of God, and walks out. Did I miss something?
Yeah, it's... Again, I'm really thinking...
Because Melissa Joan Hart did not get fired, there's a God. And because...
That's interesting.
Clarissa, please explain it all.
Yes.
Because I don't know what's going on. I don't know. These movies really, really think that they've really make these points. But I have not come across one yet. It just kind of thinks it's made a point and then leaves us.
Pretty much.
We're just supposed to take their word for it. It's like... Okay. As somebody who is on the fence, I can bring myself to believe that there might possibly be a higher power that started all this, and is up there now, doing all this stuff, and if, you know, we don't end up being horrible, terrible people, maybe there's a heaven afterwards, and everything is great. However, I am not willing to believe, for 1 ounce of a second, that these movies know what in the fuck they're talking about. I can't bring myself to do that. Sorry. So... That's what God's Not Dead 2 is. But, you know, Duck Dynasty's fan base and all that, they're gonna just... This is a brand new lesson for your horribly doomed children.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, let's get out of here. I'm just gonna leave now. We don't even need to talk about the other two movies. I'm leaving now. Goodbye. No verses this week either. Bye. Sorry, I guess I need to stick around. Okay, fine. I'll do the verses too, I guess. Our second movie is I Saw the Light, which is a Hank Williams biopic starring Tom Hiddleston. That was supposed to come out last year, but didn't. And it was only vaguely on my radar. I was like, oh yeah, that country music movie with Tom Hiddleston. I didn't even know it was a Hank Williams movie. I was just like, yeah, I saw one still of Tom Hiddleston with a guitar. That's all I know. And Olsen was in it. So yeah, it's here now, weirdly. I have no idea how this movie got here. But we actually saw this in our local theater, which is really bizarre.
Yeah, it blew my mind it was even here.
I actually, sometimes I had to look around to make sure we weren't in the art house theater we go to for the smaller movies. that's like 45 minutes from here.
The trailers they had to put on it.
Nope, we were in our normal theater, which is very interesting. Okay, so, I wasn't excited for this. Because the musical biopic, obviously, is extremely played out, and we know exactly every single, piece of that formula. And of course, there's the whole country music aspect. That is absolutely, positively not winning me over either. So we're combining the two, which is great. Country Strong, starring Loki. Great. As well as Scarlet Witch. Great. Okay, so, yes. It's everything you think it is. We have Tom Hiddleston playing this character from real life, who is a struggling musician. The opening scene, he gets married. Then he finds fame. Then he becomes a father. Then he finds alcohol. Then he finds drugs. Has a downfall. Has ups, has downs, has divorces. Has people turn on him. Has people fall in love with him. Dies. It's the same movie you've seen every single time. Okay, so, what is here to talk about? Well, obviously the main selling point, I guess, would be Hiddleston's performance. Which I guess some members of the Williams family are not happy with. Number one, because he's British. That seemed to be an immediate thing they jumped on. But as I said, typically, unless it's really, really obvious, accents are just whatever to me. I don't really, it's not something that catches my attention for some reason. But, there are moments here, and I don't even know if it's a combination of him trying to hide his accent while also putting on a character voice, or whatever it is. But, I think he's fine. There are some scenes where, I admittedly cannot really understand what he was saying. Sometimes. It's not like a whole thing. It's not like, Hardy and the Revenant. Amazing as that performance is, sometimes it's alright when you can't understand somebody. As long as the performance is great. But here, it was kind of like, I really didn't catch some of that. Can you repeat that, please? I'm pretty sure, that, at the one point when he started the fight with that guy, and they break into a scuffle, now I was like, I didn't even catch what he said to him. I have no idea what this fight is for. Did you catch it?
There's so much going on at once.
Okay. But for the most part, I think I have no knowledge whatsoever of Hank Williams. He's not a thing. I recognized a couple of the songs when I heard them. But only after I heard them. Like that, of course, this isn't my area of expertise, so I wouldn't know anyway.
This is old school for me.
But as far as I'm concerned, the performance is fine. He just has to do the biopic thing. It's like the easiest fucking thing in the world for an actor to do, I would think, by this point. And most of them are doused in Oscar nominations. Sorry, Hiddleston, but that's not going to be the case today anyway.
This is Amelia.
No. Well, getting pushed didn't help. But the thing is the thing that he does best here is, the singing is fine too. Despite the fact that it's, a genre I don't care about at all whatsoever.
He does a good job.
Yeah, especially that on top of hiding an accent, the singing is not bad. No. Come on. But the thing I think he does really well here is that he's got to keep the character likable despite, the things that occur in his downfalls. Like being drunk all the time and drugged out and firing a gun in his house and doing all that dramatic Oscar-y clip stuff. He's still gotta be somebody that you feel bad for when he reaches those lows, and when he's in his good parts, he wins you back over. You're not like Olsen's character eventually, there are scenes where we understand where she's coming from, and she's like, I'm getting the hell away from you, and you're like, yeah, you go girl, do that. And then, there are moments when, she's still writing him off. And we know why, because we see all the bad shit that he does. But at the same time, we're kind of like, oh, give him a break. And it's like, that's a testament to his performance, that he can do some bad shit and we say, oh, give him a break. I mean, we don't really feel that way because we know the bad things that he does, but he just has enough of a presence and likability to where you don't completely turn on him throughout the movie. Not to mention, it's kind of hard to take a side when there's so much back and forth going on between him and Olsen, and it's kind of like when she gets her lawyer just from out of nowhere, and she's like, yeah, we're getting a divorce, but then she takes him back, and then they get divorced again, and then she talks about the fact that he physically abused her. We never see him physically abuse her, and he even says, that's a damn lie. I was like, that could be a damn lie, but the trouble is this movie is so all over the place, we don't know if it's a damn lie, or if it did happen and the movie just didn't show us. Because, this is one of those movies where, we're just kind of, the editing is all over the place. So much so that even the continuity is. Yeah. To a noticeable degree. That's some bad editing if you realize the continuity's off. The thing where, Hank will be, turned this way, and she'll be talking to him, and then it'll cut, and it's continuing the conversation, but he's, facing her now. It's that kind of editing. But then there's also stuff where it's obviously he has, when it starts off, it's just an alcohol problem. He hasn't gone into the drugs yet. And when he does, it's actually quite sudden and jarring, because you're like, what the fuck? I didn't realize he was doing this now. But this is the way it plays out. He's drunk a lot, and then she's like, I'm leaving you. And then we cut, and he's in rehab, apparently. I had to guess he was in rehab, because there's 2 blank white beds there in this pretty much otherwise empty room, and he's under the covers shivering. It's like, well, this is obviously rehab. And then the next scene, he's done with rehab. Bye. There was no setup to the rehab. Nope. And it lasted one scene that lasts 10 seconds. He's not in rehab, he's under the cover shivering, he's out of rehab. Yeah. And I don't know. So by that extent, we can realize that there's a lot of stuff, this movie just kind of blows right over. So like I said, we don't even know where the character's coming from half the time, because we don't know if they're guilty of stuff or not. Hank might have beat her, or she might be a liar. Either one, we don't really know. Because the movie just kind of cuts around everything. It's also one of those ones where pretty much every time there's a change in scene, they show you the date and the year. Yep. And it's they did it once, and then the second time they did it, it was oh crap, I don't know how much time has passed because I totally forgot what that first date was. And then the rest of the movie just keeps showing us dates like it matters. It's we can't, there's so many great movies like Brokeback that can just show ways of time passage with various things. Without pelting dates at us, which is just confusing and fills our heads with stuff that doesn't need to be in there. And there's apparently some passion in this because the writer is also the director. So typically there has to be just some passion there. You would think. And so there's moments where obviously we have a normal, boring-ass biopic setup. We're just going through every single motion we already know. So there are moments here where you can tell they're kind of trying to spice it up a little bit with dialogue. But not really. One that comes to mind immediately is when Hank's talking about all the bills he pays or doesn't pay. And so they give him $2,200 in cash. And he's like, well, money. Some of it's green and some of it's bloody. It's I get what he's trying to say, but I think that line the writer thought was a lot more clever than it was. That's I get what it's saying, but that's a really damn sloppy way of saying it. And I get you were trying to sound punchy and shit. But your effort was a little lost. And another thing about this clearly being a movie of passion, since it's by a writer-director, is that how does one write a movie like this without getting bored with themselves? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you look at these scenes and how they play out as you struggle to stay awake, and you're like, how did somebody type this down on paper and were fascinated by what they were creating? So like, this must be the die-hardest of die-hard fans of Hank Williams for this movie to be riveting enough for them to continue the script that they started, let alone make the movie. And this stuff is, when I say this, I mean, like, there is a scene that's amusing until you realize that that's all the scene is, where they're at a party and Hank gets drunk and goes outside and finds amusement in using the garage door opener to open and close it over and over and over again. And you think this, like he says, this inspires me or something. And it's a humorous scene and everything, but it goes on for a while, and then at the end of it you realize that was the whole thing that scene served a purpose for. And it's like, this movie really doesn't have a lot of direction, does it? It's just kind of, he's got to do the normal biopic things until he dies. That's all this movie is going to be.
And it made it look worse because Miles Ahead had a trailer before it. Miles Ahead looks like it's got a billion things going for it.
And I hear it's very unconventional as far as biopics go, Miles Ahead.
Just the trailer alone just gives me that vibe.
Yeah. So we got Hiddleston's performance, which is fine, and then it's got nice production values too.
Right.
And Olsen's growing on me. I really didn't care for Elizabeth Olsen for a long time.
Right.
And then it was actually, I didn't like the movie, but her performance in Very Good Girls, the movie she did with Dakota Fanning, is when I was kind of like, okay, I kind of like her. And then since then, she's kind of won me over, and it's fine. I just didn't like Martha Marlene that much. That's just how much I didn't like that movie. Yeah, and it's very much, you can tell it's a writer-director, because it's very directed. It's, it's like, I get it if you're having a scene where Hiddleston's singing, and you're rotating the camera from behind him and then coming around to the front of him. You don't, however, do that with the camera when a normal conversation's being had. You might want to save that for your concert scenes and not use it all the time. That's just a suggestion. I know you made a movie and I haven't, so if you think that was a superior choice, you go right ahead and rotate the camera in both your concert scenes and your conversation scenes. Do what you want to do. But yes, I'm talking to the director whose name I've forgotten now. Yeah, there's really not a lot to offer here. It's kind of and there's this confusing setup where the story seems like it's kind of being told through Bradley Whitford's character.
Right. Because
he's doing like this interview that's kind of split up throughout the movie. It's like the interviews in Alpha Dog. But where the interviews in Alpha Dog kind of bookend the movie, Bradley Whitford's kind of sprinkled throughout to where it's like, I think he was supposed to be like a consistent narrator, but it's like he was there once, and then there was a long gap where he wasn't, and then he was there again, kind of in the middle, and then he's like there all the time for the last 30 minutes or so. And it seemed very, like, I'm not sure if that was supposed to be holding the story together or what, but that kind of backfired, didn't it?
Yeah.
Apparently it's being trashed by critics. It's not like a bad movie. It's just seriously nothing you haven't seen before.
Which is a shame, because this could have been so much more.
With a performance that doesn't really reach necessarily stellar heights. Which typically is what propels musical biopics into a little more than what they kind of are on the surface, is the central performance.
Right. And
while Hiddleston is like, you know, he does what he can with it, fine. It's not enough to really elevate anything. So that's it. The people in the theater with us were very moved. But you know, if this is the kind of thing that you would like pay money to see, it probably is the kind of movie that would move you. But Otherwise, you're more likely to just kind of watch it in passing when it's like on TV or something. So yeah.
It was cool seeing some of the things though, because country is like a piece of my childhood, and I knew a lot of the songs. And I went to Nashville to go to the Grand Ole Opry, and that was one of the cool things I got to see, and it was cool seeing that on the big screen.
Our last movie is Get a Job, which we're a week late on, unfortunately. Actually, quite fortunately. I'm glad I didn't do this last week, because then I would have been miserable last week, but instead I am this week. Oh man, there's one more point I didn't make about God's Not Dead. But
Go ahead.
I'll do it at the end if you remind me.
No, I will.
Get a Job is a movie starring Miles Teller, Anna Kendrick, and Bryan Cranston as our main cast. There's a lot more people in there I'll get to. But in the meantime, I think it should be brought up that this movie is 4 years old. Bryan Cranston was talking about this movie having been made when he was doing the press runs for Argo. Okay? He was talking about he had just finished this movie when Argo was being promoted. That's October of 2012. Okay? So this movie just sat around with nobody caring about it. And they were like, well, Miles Teller's really taken off. Because nobody really knew who Miles Teller was in 2012. It was just Project X, I think, and Rabbit Hole. And to an extent, Footloose. There was no Whiplash or Spectacular Now or anything like that yet. So, this movie just sat around, and they're like, well, okay, Miles Teller's had Whiplash now, and, you know, Anna Kendrick's getting real big now, and obviously Cranston's, Cranston. We can probably put this motherfucker out now. Just real quietly, like on the internet or something. just get it off the shelf and get it out of our lives. So, and watching the movie, you can pretty much tell that was the way of thinking. Because I was prepared for, like, okay, it's probably just some dumb comedy, but with the cast, maybe it's got some charm in it. Well, immediately, we start off, and Miles Teller needs a job. That's what it is. And Cranston's got a really great job, and his girlfriend's Anna Kendrick, she's got a really great job. Dude needs a job, so he's not a failure. He lives at home with his friends, playing video games and getting high. And his friends are Nicholas Braun, Brandon T. Jackson, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
This sounds good on paper.
Well, wait on. Just hold on.
All right.
We'll get there. So, it's basically just hijinks ensue as he tries to get a job. It's a fucking sitcom. And a bad one at that. And it's one of those movies where the first big thing is he gets a job at a hotel. Mark Maron, I think that was him. It was the boss. And then he's working there, and then Jay Pharoah shows up, and Jay Pharoah is one of those really over-the-top stereotypical pimps. And he's using the hotel as a brothel. And the big payoff is, the cops show up, and, Mark Maron fires him because, he was letting prostitutes in. Even though Mark Maron knew what was going on, but he had to cover his own ass. So, man, Miles Teller just can't get a job. Now, it's like, well, that was our first big comedy moment, and we're progressing along now. It's clear that he's going to have trouble getting a job. Okay, the movie's very short. It's an hour and 20 minutes. We've had our first big thing going on, the thing that really sets the plot off in motion. How long have we been on? Let's check. 7 minutes. I felt like we'd made progress, and we're 7 minutes in.
Uh-oh.
An hour and 20 minutes, and you can't even give me pacing. Fuck you. So, anyway, and what's really funny about this is it was shot in 2012, because immediately in this first 7 minutes, there's a total and completely dated reference. Jay Pharoah's secretly talking to Miles Teller, and he's talking about this, prostitute he picked up. And where do you think he found her? Borders.
Oh, man. This is 2012. This actually is 2010 or 11. By 12, most of them were gone.
And then, yeah. And even Miles Teller can't believe it. His response is, "You mean Borders Bookstore?" And then I respond saying, "You mean that place that doesn't exist anymore and hasn't for like 3 years?" It's probably been longer than that, hasn't it?
Yeah. Boy, Circuit City was a really fun place to be. Maybe that'd be in the next movie.
So, and this is what we're looking at, but it's not just Miles Teller can't get a job, hijinks ensue. Hijinks must ensue for Brandon T. Jackson and Nicholas Braun as well. Christopher Mintz-Plasse just kind of hangs around as desperate comedic factor. His thing is he has come up with this app called I Search You, but they joke around and call it I Stalk You, because what it is his character's supposed to be comedically creepy. But of course, naturally, he's just creepy. So, what it is, his app is you send someone a text message, and assuming this is somebody that ignores you, if you send them this text message, the app sends a text back to you that tells you their exact location, and you can track them down. The issue is that this is the only joke for this character throughout the whole movie, and he keeps popping back up again and again and again. And the weirdest thing about this is, yeah, he calls it I Search You, but they make fun of him for being creepy by calling it I Stalk You. Do you know what the whole payoff to this thing is? We're supposed to say, okay, this dude's creepy, which is kind of what makes him funny, but that's what we're supposed to think, but it's just creepy, right? Well, the payoff to this joke is that he does end up calling it I Stalk You, and it becomes like this world-famous app. And that's the payoff. And it's treated by the movie as a good thing.
Okay.
I don't know. Somebody got lost in the middle of that. And then Brandon T. Jackson's thing is he goes to work for John C. McGinley. Because John C. McGinley is a tremendously talented actor and who can be funny as all hell. But if you're an absolutely positively desperate comedy with no place to go, you cast John C. McGinley as an authority figure. That is the true sign of a bad comedy. I wouldn't necessarily call him an authority figure in Office Space, to the extent in the other movies I'm talking about. So that doesn't count. But otherwise, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. There have been a number of bad movies you've seen where there was an authority figure played by John C. McGinley, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, the jokes continue, and this movie decides, well, we've thrown enough fucks into it. We're gonna get the R rating. Let's go ahead and make it a gross-out movie.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. So, here are some of the fantastic jokes we have. In order to be accepted in this Wolf of Wall Street style office that John C. McGinley runs, Brandon T. Jackson has to drink an entire jar of deer cum.
Why?
While everyone in the office chants deer cum as he does this. He does it, and then he pukes, and then the scene just lingers in silence. Comedy gold on our hands.
Oh my god.
Then, there is a scene where Miles Teller is getting high, so of course, he has to take a drug test in order to get this new job. Go figure. Where do you think this is going? He goes and he raps on Cranston's door in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, Dad, I need some piss." So, he does not give Cranston a little container and say, "Put some piss in this." And then slip it in his pocket and then go in and then do it. For some reason, Cranston had enough piss in him to fill an entire water bottle that Teller straps to the inside of his pants and goes through the whole trouble of the tube to make it look like he's pissing. But the thing is here is that Alison Brie plays another character this really weirdly unprofessional character that's like always all over him and being inappropriate because that's her character trait. And there's a moment where he's like, okay, I'm going to go in here and take a piss. And because she's that character, she's like, oh no, I have to come in and watch you. And she goes into the men's restroom to watch him do it. And is all creepy about it. So despite the fact that he wasn't counting on Alison Brie being in there, he does the whole water bottle tube setup to make it look like he's actually going thing. And you know why? Because we have to have the joke where he sprays it all over himself. Right? These are the comedic highlights of this movie. When you see this movie labeled as comedy, this is what you're getting. It does not go beyond this.
That's horrible.
Anna Kendrick sounds, I apologize. They really, really wanted to use her to market this movie because, Pitch Perfect's popular. And I think she's, really popular on social media, too. So, we get Anna Kendrick on the poster in a supposedly crucial role for about 15 minutes. 15 minutes worth. And she's totally and completely useless. The whole time.
So sad.
You could take her entire character completely out of this movie. I swear to God the movie would not change. Not even in any way. There would be no altering involved whatsoever if she was not in this movie. She's just there to be the girlfriend who has a change of character that's not very funny. She's the stuck-up girlfriend that doesn't like the friends getting high and thinks he should get a job. What do you think happens? She loses her job and ends up being a pothead couch potato because hilarity. Total and complete hilarity.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Thank you for not letting me waste my time on this.
Mm-hmm. And she's kind of, like Olsen, she's kind of growing on me too. I think just recently, last time I reviewed a Pitch Perfect movie, I said I really don't like Kendrick. That's not really true now. It's kind of, I think it was just like, I don't know, her character types were kind of off-putting at first, but now she's, it's nice to watch her show up and be adorable and all that stuff. So I guess it actually, weirdly enough, made me like the movie even less, that she was so useless in it. Because regardless of what you think of her, people tend to forget she's an Oscar-nominated actress. It's I know. And speaking of well-respected people, I would just like to throw mercy at this movie in one way. And that is that, if this movie had been just about Bryan Cranston's character, it might have been okay. But what very little likability he's able to inject into this piece of shit, just for lack of a better term, just everything is just totally and completely brought down. And it just has no direction at all. Like, who do we have in here? We have, Miles Teller's boss is, of course, the stern, all business boss that's, speaking of Oscars, Marcia Gay Harden. Take control of your career, please. I know that's hard for, women at a certain time in, Hollywood, because Hollywood biases and all that, or as they say. But you can do so much better than this. Y'all can. All of you can. Not just Marcia Gay Harden. Every single person in this movie can be doing something better. John Cho is in there with one scene he's the guy that's supposed to have promoted Miles Teller, but then doesn't, and that's why he has to start a job search. Bruce Davison, Sean O'Brien, a number of people just... Like every other scene, a new face pops up, and you're like, what are you... You see them, and you're like, hey, what are you doing here? And then you remember you're watching Get a Job, and you're like, oh, God, what are you doing here? Get out of this movie! Bruce Davison's an Oscar nominee, too! Longtime companion. That's a beautiful performance from Bruce Davison. And now he's playing the somewhat boss guy in this. Jorge Garcia, who's always useless, and he's, because I haven't seen Lost, I guess I haven't found Jorge Garcia's purpose in life yet. But when he's in movies, he's just here so that people can say, hey, that guy from Lost, because that's all I know. I don't know. Not to mention it just gets more outlandish and stupid as it goes. This goes to, I mean, yeah, it gets, yeah, you know, if comedies can go outlandish, if they can do it right, that's great. But this is just fucking bullshit, a lot of this movie is. And it gets worse as it goes. There are scenes in this where it's like, he's talking to, a character named Fernando. And the guy has to correct him and say it's Fernando. A whole scene is devoted to this.
Why?
Because this is how out of ideas they were.
God,
this is the type of movie that sits on a shelf for 4 years. That's just what happens. And these are just, and yeah, like everything I told you. Yeah, and conflicts. Like there's not even like one particular conflict throughout. Like the movie's called Get a Job. The idea is that he needs to get a job. About a half hour in, he gets a job. And then they just kind of put problems in, and then those problems just kind of come and go until the movie just gives up and just ends. There's not even a payoff ending, really. It's, oh, Marcia Gay Harden gets some comeuppance because, ooh, evil boss. But there was really, she didn't even really do a whole lot necessarily to even really, like, you know, deserve that. Deserve public humiliation. But the movie needed an ending. So she got the shit end of the stick. She drew the short straw. The Oscar winner of the bunch drew the short straw as far as who would get comeuppance. So, Marcia A. Harden's character needs to be subject to public humiliation. But Christopher Mintz-Plase's I Stalk You app is a good thing, and is why they're all successful in the end. Do you know how this movie ends, actually? Like, you talk about movies that don't want to stop. It's one of those ones where we keep intercutting the credits with extra scenes. And the extra scene is them shooting a commercial for the I Stalk You app. And this is how it plays out. Like, you think, I keep talking about, you think there's going to be some big comedic payoff, and there never is one throughout the entire movie. Well, there's actually a point where the movie ends, and the director's name comes up, and then we cut, and it's the I Stalk You app commercial that they're filming at the hotel with their friend, with the other characters in the movie. And the credits keep intercutting with this. Like, they do one part of the I Stalk You commercial, and then it's a credit. And then they do another part of the I Stalk You commercial, it's another credit. And it goes back and forth. And it's like, oh man, I'll bet when we get to the end of the credits, there's a really big payoff before the movie ends completely and the credits roll. The credits stop. Miles Teller looks into the camera and watches the commercial back. And everybody gathers around and watches it. And he's like, yep, we got it! And everybody cheers. That's the end of the movie. Then the credits roll.
Okay.
We got it. We made a commercial for the I Stalk You app. That was our big build-up. How do you even talk about a movie so anticlimactic in every aspect? And it's not even, he's not even good at his job. Like, the whole reason Marcia Gay Harden is the bad character is because he makes videos that go viral. That's his whole thing. That's his thing. He makes YouTube videos. That's his thing. So, he makes this video that's for this company. And the way it's portrayed by the other characters in the movie, and the way Marcia Gay Harden says it's a bad video, and the fact that she's supposed to be our villain, means that we're supposed to think it's a great video. It's a fucking shitty video. It's an old dude, like, drumming, and then he holds up his website on a piece of paper. It's very clear why Marcia Gay Harden said, this is not going to sell. You're an idiot. You know those, like, local commercials you see with those dipshits in, like, costumes trying to sell their shit? It was like one of those. Only they were trying to sell it as, like, this big campaign commercial. And we're, as an audience, are supposed to side with him and think that video's great and it's going to be a success. We're supposed to think Marcia Gay Harden's the bad guy for saying, what a shitty video that is. I have no idea where this movie's head's at. And yeah, we're following Nicholas Braun's character around, too, when we're not watching Brandon T. Jackson drink deer come and be an errand boy and all that. Which has no fucking payoff whatsoever, either. And, of course, the scene with Nicholas Braun's character is he's the basketball coach. And do you think he's really hard on them even though they're just kids? Do you think there's a scene where he breaks their participation trophies and gives them a big speech about how participation trophies are bullshit and they need to earn stuff? Do you think there's a scene of large comedic value where he throws a basketball at a kid and knocks him out? I don't know who to place the blame on, because it's clear everybody in the movie is above the material. And it's very clear that the studio knew they'd made a piece of shit because this movie's 4 years old and being released last week. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see this director again, which is good news. The writers, I don't even know. I don't know. But somebody fucked up. I don't know. That's how I can. That's the only way I can end talking about Get a Job is somebody fucked up badly. Just like the rest of the movies this week. That last point I wanted to make about God's Not Dead. I was telling you about how unhealthy those are and how untrustworthy those movies are from the standpoint they're coming from. Let me ask you something. I understand that Batman is a big deal. And My Big Fat Greek Wedding was going to have its own kind of crowd, too.
Alright.
I get it. But I can't really foresee that your audience paths were going to cross. I can't really see. I just can't imagine that, really. So, here's the thing. What does it say that they had the absolute, total, and complete opportunity to release God's Not Dead on Easter weekend?
Yeah.
Instead, they wait a week and release it on April Fool's Day. Does that or does that not have really sinister undertones coming from that company?
I've been saying this for a while, actually.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I think there's some evil, evil people behind that movie.
Well, yeah.
So, what do we have next week?
You don't want to talk about Pat Boone and Robin Givens because you didn't mention them at all.
Doesn't matter. Really, really mean joke about Robin Givens went through my head when I first saw her, which I'm not gonna say. So,
involving someone that probably was going to have been in a movie this week that we didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We think alike.
Mm-hmm.
Next week is Hardcore Henry.
Oh.
And The Boss.
Oh.
Yeah, I know it's going to be garbage. And hopefully, with any luck, we'll get lucky and everybody wants some.
I don't know.
I know. I mean, I Saw the Light gives me a little hope, though.
We didn't get Boyhood, though.
Sony Pictures Classics does not come up at my theater very often.
Once we get a Woody Allen movie late.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
I don't know.
That's next week.
His next movie, what's the title? Woody Allen's next movie is Cafe something. Can't remember the second word. But all I think of is, I saw the title Cafe something, and I was like, yeah, that's not coming here.
No. Most of the trailers on I Saw the Light are not coming here either. So, before we end, I'm sure it's pretty obvious, but let's see exactly how obvious. God's Not Dead 2.
1.
I Saw the Light.
2.
Get a Job.
1.
Wow. That's a horrible average.
I wanted to go up a half on Get a Job just for Bryan Cranston and what he brought to the table, but it's just, when your movie is that poorly made, there's just literally nothing that can save it.
Right.
When Bryan Cranston can't save you, you have fucked up real bad.
Right.
Because Bryan Cranston could save anything.
Correct.
So I could say something clever there, I'm just going to say anything.
Works for me.
Alright.
So, versus this week, your cryptic comment is Asylum. That's going to be on Sunday. And, of course, a lot of wrestling. This is the Long Pop weekend. Tonight is the NXT TakeOver Dallas podcast at 12:30, so that's early Saturday morning. The Hall of Fame podcast starting at 11:30 p.m. with the normal panel. We're going to talk indie wrestling as well. And, of course, Sunday, WrestleMania 32. That podcast starting around 11:30 p.m. And Raw on Monday. Gaming with Ash hopefully returning next week. So a lot of great content coming from the podcast network. And Halloween Horror Nights news coming very soon. So, that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?